Hernandez clutched his books tightly to his chest as he walked through the school hallways, trying to ignore the stares and whispers that followed him like a shadow. He was only 16, but the weight he carried felt like decades. The son of undocumented Latino immigrants living in the United States, Hernandez knew that every step he took was a silent battle. "Hey, Hernandez, gonna tell your daddy we got you again?" sneered one of the boys, Jake, with a cruel grin. The others laughed, encouraged. But Hernandez kept his head high. He wasn't just any kid. He was a dedicated student who spent hours after school studying to become something more than the life his parents could offer. In the classroom, his intelligence shone, but in the schoolyard, he was a constant target. That morning, after class, Hernandez sat on a bench in the park near the school, trying to understand why his bullies seemed so determined to break him. Deep down, he felt a mix of fear and determination. Fear of what could happen if his parents were discovered, and determination to prove that he belonged just as much as anyone else. As he stared at the gray sky, he heard footsteps behind him. "Why don't you ever fight back?" asked a soft voice. It was Maria, his best friend since elementary school, who always tried to protect him. "I don't want to fight, Maria," Hernandez replied, eyes fixed on the horizon. "If they knew what I was going through at home, maybe they wouldn't feel the need to attack me." She squeezed his hand, and for a moment, the promise of a better future seemed just a little closer. The next morning, Hernandez walked into school still carrying the weight of the teasing from the day before. But something felt different in the air, a growing murmur among the students. In math class, Jake, the leader of the bullies, stumbled on a difficult equation, and for a moment, his arrogance cracked. "Hey, Hernandez, can you help me with this?" Jake asked, his voice a mix of surprise and hesitation. The classroom fell silent. Hernandez looked at the board, then at Jake. He could have ignored him, like always, but something inside him shifted. He took a deep breath and walked over to the boy's desk. "Sure," he said, patiently explaining. The other students watched in disbelief. Maria smiled faintly, surprised and hopeful. During the break, Hernandez sat next to Jake on a bench by the gym. "Why do you mess with me so much?" he asked without flinching. Jake looked away, revealing a side of himself no one had seen before. "It's complicated. My family's going through stuff. My dad lost his job, and I don't want to look weak in front of everyone." Hernandez felt a pang of empathy. He knew what it was like to carry a heavy burden in silence. "Maybe if we worked together," Hernandez said, "you wouldn't have to act that way to get noticed." In the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Hernandez started helping Jake and his friends with their schoolwork. Little by little, the bullying gave way to a curious alliance. They were still young, and the tension hadn't disappeared entirely, but a bond was forming, a bridge between two worlds that seemed destined to stay apart. But beneath that new hope, an invisible threat was closing in on Hernandez's life, ready to shatter everything he was starting to build. One afternoon, Hernandez was at home helping his mother prepare dinner when the sound of distant sirens made his heart race. His father walked into the kitchen, his face tense, and quietly turned off the TV. "Hernandez, I need to talk to you," he said softly, avoiding his son's eyes. They sat at the table, and the heavy silence between them was almost suffocating. "There's a high chance of an immigration raid in our neighborhood. I don't know how much longer we can stay," his father said, his voice trembling. Hernandez felt his world collapse around him. Every effort at school, every dream suddenly seemed like it could vanish in an instant.
At school, meanwhile, his relationship with the other boys was evolving. Jake and his friends were starting to show real interest in learning, driven by Hernandez's help. The tension from the bullying was fading, replaced by a fragile atmosphere of respect. One morning during break, Jake called Hernandez over to the gym. "Hey man, I heard what's going on. Is it true?" Jake asked, visibly concerned. "They're going after my family," Hernandez murmured. "I don't know what to do." Jake was silent, clearly battling with guilt. He knew that just months ago he had mocked Hernandez for being illegal. Now he saw the real cost of that kind of hatred. "Listen, my mom's a lawyer. Maybe she can help. We have to try something," Jake said, putting a hand on Hernandez's shoulder. For the first time, Hernandez felt like he wasn't entirely alone. But he also knew one thing for sure. Ice doesn't give up easily. And now, time was running out.
The following week, everything changed. During history class, the principal walked in with a serious expression. She whispered something to the teacher, who looked directly at Hernandez. "Hernandez, Mrs. Turner needs to see you in the office." His heart pounded. He stood slowly, feeling eyes burning into his back as he walked out of the room. In the hallway, he saw two men in suits waiting. They were ICE agents. "Hernandez Garcia?" one of them asked, showing a badge. "We need to speak with you regarding your immigration status." The agent's voice sounded distant, like it was echoing underwater. Hernandez froze. His breathing grew shallow, hands sweating. A teacher quickly stepped in and intervened. "He's a minor. You'll need a guardian present." The agents backed off, but left a warning they'd return with a warrant. The news spread through the school like wildfire. For the first time, students saw Hernandez not as the quiet kid, but as a target. Jake found him at the end of the day, leaning against a locker, pale. "Dude, I heard what happened. Is it real?" Jake asked, clearly worried. "They're coming for my family. I don't know what to do." Jake said nothing at first, visibly shaken. He knew that months ago he had laughed at Hernandez for being undocumented. Now he saw what that label truly meant. "Look, my mom's a lawyer. Maybe she can help. We have to do something," Jake said, gripping his friend's shoulder. For the first time, Hernandez felt a small light in the darkness. But deep down, he also knew ICE doesn't wait. And now, everything was on the line. That night, Hernandez could barely eat. The success of the festival felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by the looming nightmare of deportation. His mother cried softly in the kitchen, while his father paced silently, lost in thought. Hernandez sat at the table, the conversation with Jake replaying in his mind. My mom's a lawyer. The next morning, before the sun had even risen, Jake was at Hernandez's door. He wore a worn jacket and held a folder in his hands. "This is my mom, Donna. She said she can help you," he said, gesturing to the well-dressed woman beside him. Donna entered the house with a calm, kind expression. "Hernandez, are your parents home? Can we speak with them?" The meeting lasted for hours. Donna explained that despite the difficult situation, there was a chance. If Hernandez could earn a scholarship or demonstrate academic excellence with community impact, he might qualify for temporary protection. But time was short. You need to do something that gets noticed by the school, by the community. Show that you deserve to stay, she said. Hernandez looked at his parents. They were silent, but their eyes were full of hope and fear. At school, Hernandez told Jake and the others his plan: to create a community project
that united immigrant and American students, a mutual support club with tutoring, cultural events, and open discussions. "That'll never work," one of the boys said. But Jake stood firm. "Yes, it will. We'll make it work." And so it began. The project was named Roots and Bridges, a tribute to heritage and building something new. But the clock was ticking, and ICE doesn't wait for good ideas. Hernandez needed more than just a great project. He needed a miracle.
With the name Roots and Bridges painted in colorful letters on a school mural, the project started small. But within a week, it became the most talked about thing in the halls. Hernandez led with charisma and discipline, organizing meetings between students of different backgrounds, facilitating conversations about identity, discrimination, and dreams. For many, it was the first time they heard the stories of immigrant children, lives marked by fear, sacrifice, and invisibility. Jake, once one of the biggest bullies, now helped prepare presentations about empathy and justice. It was strange at first, but he stood firmly by Hernandez's side. "I didn't know you guys lived with so much fear," a student confessed during a circle discussion. "I always thought it was an exaggeration." "It's not an exaggeration," Hernandez replied. "At any moment, I could go home and not find my parents anymore." The school took notice. Teachers, counselors, and even the principal began to support the club. In less than a month, Roots and Bridges was featured in the local newspaper. Jake's mother used the article to compile a legal dossier. She told Hernandez, "This is what we need, proof that you make a difference." But not everyone was happy. A group of parents, led by a man named Mr. Whitaker, demanded the project's closure. They claimed it glorified illegal immigrants. At a heated school meeting, Whitaker pointed at Hernandez in front of everyone. "That kid shouldn't even be here!" The silence was broken by Jake, who stood up and shouted, "If he shouldn't be here, then I don't want to be here either!" The room erupted in murmurs. Hernandez, standing tall, felt the ground shake beneath his feet. Now it was no longer just about him, it was about all of them.
The morning after the meeting, the school was filled with tension. Many students started wearing white t-shirts with the phrase, "We are all Hernandez," written in marker. The symbolic gesture spread quickly, crossing school walls and reaching social media. But the community's response was divided. While some applauded the movement, others threatened to pull their kids out of school. Mr. Whitaker, now even angrier, used his connections with local politicians to pressure the school district and ICE. At Hernandez's home, the tension was palpable. At any moment, agents could show up. But there was also a thread of hope. The case was gaining visibility, and a special hearing was scheduled. If Hernandez could prove his positive impact on the community, he might be considered for humanitarian protection. At school, Jake gathered their classmates and proposed something bold. "Let's organize a public event, a cultural festival, with music, food, speeches, a stage for Hernandez to show everything he's built." "What if no one shows up?" Maria asked. Jake looked at Hernandez. "We'll make sure they show up." The following weeks were intense. Rehearsals, flyers, interviews on local radio. Despite constant fear, Hernandez became the heart of the project. On the day of the festival, the school courtyard was packed. There were Mexican food stalls, Latin dance performances, posters with messages of inclusion. Hernandez took the stage and, with a steady voice, shared his story. He spoke of fear, struggle, and dignity. At the end, teary eyes and a standing ovation. But as the lights of the festival dimmed, a black government van quietly parked around the corner. Inside, two agents flipped through a file labeled Hernandez Garcia.
That night, Hernandez could hardly sleep. The success of the festival felt like a dream, but the nightmare of deportation lingered like a constant shadow. His parents, though proud, were on high alert. At any moment, they could be taken away. The next morning, as Hernandez walked to school, he spotted the same black van parked down the block. His heart raced. He quickened his pace, trying to ignore the eyes watching him from inside the vehicle. At school, he was immediately called to the principal's office. Inside, he saw the two ICE agents sitting alongside the principal and Jake's mother, Donna. "Hernandez," one of the agents said sternly, "we're here for a final check before tomorrow's hearing." Hernandez sat down slowly. Donna handed over a thick folder with more than 100 pages. "This is the full report of Hernandez's community work, with signatures of support, news articles, photos, and testimonials. He is more than just a student. He's a bridge between worlds." The agents flipped through the documents in silence. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze. "This is unusual," one agent muttered, "but it will be sent for immediate review. Until then, no action will be taken against your family." Hernandez exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Outside, when he left the room, Jake, Maria, and other students were waiting for him. "So, what's the verdict?" Jake asked. "The fight isn't over, but now we have a chance." At the hearing days later, the judge looked at Hernandez seriously. "You're not just a promising youth. You are living proof that integrity, courage, and empathy know no borders." The deportation was suspended. Hernandez was granted temporary permission to stay and to study. The boy who was once bullied became a symbol of resistance. And ironically, it was by reaching out to those who once hurt him that he found his greatest strength.